Welcome to Practical Shamanism. I'm Katie Weatherup. I'm a former engineer with 20 years of experience working as a shamanic practitioner, and I hope to help you to connect to your personal power and magic and to support you in living a really good life that just keeps getting better. Thank you so much for joining me. So I'd love to talk to you today about soul purpose and understanding soul purpose and how a proper understanding of this term and what this represents can be an amazing compass for finding your way in your life, for living a life that you feel engaged and inspired and have the right map to get to happiness. So I'm all about people being able to live a really good life that just keeps getting better. And for those of you who are listening to me, you probably believe that your connection to Source, your engagement with the eternal, the bigger picture of what your soul is experiencing, is an important piece of that. And in fact, when it comes to my clients, one of the questions I get asked most often to take counsel with the guides about is a question of, what's my soul purpose? I really want to understand what I came here to do. And that's a really big question. People incarnate for lots of different reasons. Sometimes they want to heal, sometimes they want to grow, sometimes they want to experience, sometimes they want to contribute. And the tricky thing about old souls, which are a lot of my clients, and to be honest, the person who's tuning into something that has shamanism in the title probably is an old soul. You're probably not finding all the answers to your way of being in the world within the bounds of off-the-shelf religion. Like, I'm not anti-organized religion. I think there's incredible beauty, especially when the practices produce results of people who go into the world and are kind and are generous and have this view that there's something beyond the material world. I think that's really important for emotional and psychological well-being and happiness and all those kind of things. But the people who are listening to a podcast on soul purpose are probably going to be people who are asking a deeper question or engaging in a deeper way. And that's probably going to matter in terms of feeling really aligned in your life, really like you know how to orient in the world. You know how to find your way when things get dark and complicated and kind of what the compass is. And I would offer that soul purpose or soul intention is just one piece of it. There are a lot of other pieces. Now, if somebody's totally maxed out feeling aligned with soul purpose, they can often ignore some of the other elements. And I'm not saying this as a working model for most people, but if you're someone like Nelson Mandela, who's this inspirational leader, or Gandhi, or someone who just has this incredible vision of what they want to contribute, that they're just lit up with and so connected to, that they can endure many, many years of imprisonment without losing their sense of inspiration or, really considerable hardships. But for most of us, we're going to have a lot more effective time of it. There are a lot more people creating a happy, fulfilled, good life who have soul purpose as a piece, but are also choosing a life at the level of circumstance where circumstances are within their control that really aligns for the human self. It's very hard to live a life where you're so committed to what is needed on the human level. So money, safety, security, protection, I don't care if the job does harm, I just, if I'm making really good money, that's all that matters. That's a hard life to live because you're disconnected from human spirit. You're disconnected from your soul intention, and you're just serving your human animal in having needs met. And the truth of it, I would argue, is while there are often mindsets that get us away from believing that we have enough or we've got that handled, there can be a lot of survival fear even in people with massively good circumstances, that if you're skillful and strategic, it can be very straightforward to dial in enough at that level. It's not like a super, super narrow thing that you have to be really, really skilled and talented to be able to have enough, assuming that you're living in a first world country. And it's worth noting here that my wisdom really is good for people living in a first world country. You're so invited if you're not, but you may find that the resonance isn't there because I'm teaching from my own life experience. I haven't spent time in developing nations and places that have a lot more struggle at the level of circumstance. So this is really probably going to be most relevant for people whose life is basically pretty solid and they're finding a lack. They're finding a lack of joy, or they're like, hey, I want to keep optimizing. I want to keep making things more elegant and amazing and joyful and aligned and spending less of my energy for my happiness and continuing on a path where my relationship to myself and the people around me and the work and what I contribute to the world just keeps getting better, just keeps getting upgraded. So those are some markers to think about as far as who this is going to be most relevant for. So coming back to this soul purpose idea, the one side, we don't want to swing the pendulum all the way over to only being concerned with the material world, regardless of those aspects of our soul desires and intention and what feels good to our essence, the core essence of who we are. And likewise, it usually doesn't work as elegantly if we try to swing the pendulum all the way over to the other side and we're living out of our car, but we feel massively spiritually inspired. Now, granted, I know people who have lived out of their car and been massively spiritually inspired, and yay for them. Like, that's super great. I'm really happy for them. I'm not that person. I do a lot better if I have a roof over my head and reliable access to food and, running water and all those kind of things. And so there's this balance of the two. And sometimes people don't think to optimize, and it can be a first question about soul purpose. Is there a calibration where I need to either move a little bit more toward making sure the level of circumstance is conducive? Humans are remarkably resilient. We can thrive in really adverse conditions. But if you don't have to, I would argue that your spiritual connection and expansiveness and joy in life are going to be limited by working with things that are really hard for you to tolerate. And what's really hard for you to tolerate, of course, is different from person to person. But to give you an example, I live in San Diego, and plumeria can do really well here as a plant, but it doesn't do as well as in Hawaii. Plumeria naturally does better in Hawaii because of the soil content, the moisture content, the humidity, the lack of really cold temperatures. Whereas if you want to try to grow plumeria in Minnesota, unless you stick it in a greenhouse and take really heroic measures, it's not going to survive the winter. There's no way you can just kind of put it in the ground. You can just throw it in the ground in Hawaii and it has a really good chance of thriving. San Diego needs a little more tending to get it enough water. And Minnesota, again, it's just going to take so much energy. So making sure at the level of circumstance, you have enough of what aligns for you, what's the right medicine for you, what's the right environment for you, what's the right circumstances for you. That's a good thing to commit to, even if your deepest drive and your deepest love is in service to the soul purpose. And so that's something to, soul purpose can carry people through egregious circumstances, things that are really hard. But if we don't have to do it, it's better not to. The other place that I think people go amiss in understanding the compass that is their soul alignment, that is their soul intention, is that they sometimes look at it in terms of the third chakra. Now, the third chakra is the seat, it's the solar plexus. It's the seat of the mind, the thinking mind, not the intuitive mind, not the limbic mind. Those are different chakras, but the stream of consciousness voice that talks in your head all the time. That's the third chakra mind. And it's all about the seat of the ego. And I'm not anti-ego, but when people have a really oversensitized ego, so everything in their life gets interpreted for the ego's running the show, the ego's super reactive. That's where you get people who are taking offense where none is intended and really concerned with status, perceived social value of things. So they're monitoring how much money do you have, how much beauty do you have by the basic Hollywood standards, how much status do you have, what important people do you know. You can recognize someone who's really in this, they're name dropping in conversations, they're, letting you know know within 2 minutes of meeting them all the people they know. And it's not very pleasant, so I tend to back away from those people. I don't enjoy that dynamic. But at the core, you're dealing with someone who really has an inflamed, out of balance solar plexus chakra, and it's gotten really loud. And one of the things that can happen, that's an extreme example. Some of us can find this in more moderate ways, when we peek to see how many people liked the thing I shared on Facebook. And part of that can be coming from a really genuine desire for connection. Am I being seen? Are people receiving me? Am I being interpreted? Seen and heard and known is really high value for me. But there's also a part of the ego that's like, ooh, people are paying attention to me. How fun is that? And when it comes to soul purpose, one of the places the soul purpose is coming in from your crown chakra. It's this core essence that is incarnated inside your body and had an idea of why that would be a good thing to do. It's super inconvenient in a lot of ways to incarnate. For me, growing up felt like it took forever before I could be out making my own decisions and building a life that really aligned. And I had a really good upbringing, but it was still in some ways really tedious to get all the way grown up. So what was it that your soul was like, oh, I can't wait to do this? You could look at this as like planning a vacation trip. So Egypt is really alive for me. So I'm thinking, oh, I want to go to the Valley of the Kings and I want to be able to walk through these beautiful tombs. This is this vision that I have, this thing that I'm really excited about. People could be excited about hundreds of different things to visit Egypt or to travel anywhere in the world. They could be like, forget Egypt, I want to go to Peru, or I want to go to the UK and visit the Standing Stones, which I've done and I absolutely loved. So there's something that you inside of yourself, your soul, before you came here was excited about. And just as a note, you may feel like, wow, Katie, you're kind of out of your mind. I do not feel excited about being here. I feel homesick and I kind of want to go back home. First of all, it doesn't have to be like that. Like I'm so passionate about helping people get the tools quickly and efficiently to really enjoy their lives. So you might want to think about working with me on that, because that's one of my passion points for people, that you don't have to be here being homesick for the other side. And the other part of it is that you can still have had a passion to come here, and then it wasn't what you expected. So when I get to Egypt, I'm fully aware that the crowded nature of Cairo is really going to challenge energetically sensitive, overstimulatable Katie. And the heat could be really problematic. I'm like, okay, what's the best time to go? And the poverty could really challenge my empathic heart. There are some things I would really have to work with. And I have all these ways that I'm thinking about being strategic about the places I go and the sites that I see and how I'll manage that and how I'll build in downtime where I can just sit and look at something pretty. Like everything I know about myself is going into how I can have a good experience knowing that there are these challenges. But sometimes we miscalculate. Like I could have not been as aware of those kind of things and jumped on a plane and found myself in an experience that I really, really, really wasn't enjoying despite the wonderful things that were there. So sometimes what our soul imagines and the human aspects of working with parts of the world where we have a lot of friction make it more problematic. And that's where shamanism is a magnificent tool for not having to just be stuck with your original soul contract or your original soul plan. You can revise and you can update and you can curate your life to be something that works really well for the reality of the human being you are, with all of your sensitivities and all of your preferences and all of your desires, combined with something that's really aligned with your soul vision. And when those two hold hands and play nice and dance together, it's magnificent. You'll feel really inspired and on track. And when that swings out, you have a troubleshooting way to say, am I trying to work with too much? Do I need to adjust something? Like you could be caught up in an amazing project and ignoring the fact that you really need to eat and go to the bathroom. And at some point you want to swing the pendulum, take care of the biological needs, and then you can come back. And likewise, if you've gotten too focused on your fears of the material world and too much of the psychological aspects of our mind that aren't the expansive consciousness, but more the contraction of fear and instinct, that's another place you may want to rebalance. So this right here is a really good troubleshooting when you're feeling angsty and not happy with the world. How might those two parts not be playing well together, and how might you be able to rebalance them? So going back to the soul intention, I've never had the guides tell me someone's soul purpose, and this is 20 years and thousands of journeys and looking at why people came in and what their intention is. It's never been status-based. It's never been, you are the one true Messiah. There are other people who work with that, but there's not necessarily this book that you absolutely must write. I'm a fan of writing books. I loved writing books, but I truly believe that everything that I had to say, while useful and valuable and organized in a really particular way that put a lot of really great stuff together, there's still brilliant people saying a lot of what I was seeing. So someone who wanted to connect to the shamanic world could read my book, Practical Shamanism, A Guide for Walking in Both Worlds, or they could read a bunch of other books and still have the effect. So it was a marvelous, joyful, soul-aligned way to participate, but my life would not have been diminished in an appreciable way if that just hadn't been what showed up. So we don't come in with doing an accomplishment. We live in societies that are really biased toward achievement and doing and measurable results and results that other humans would admire. We glorify stories of Olympic athletes, which are super cool. I think it's awesome. But there's this overachiever, specialized, focused, measurable, spectacular achievement that I think is in the way of a really good life with enough money and enough security and enough connection and enough meaning, where people are striving for something really unattainable. Because if you're an Olympic athlete, you're probably living a life that's pretty out of balance. That's pretty much the thing you do. And as I mentioned, for the people that are drawn to my work, it's a lot of old souls who have, in some ways, a surfeit of talents. There's not usually like one thing that you're super good at to the absence of all other things. Therefore, it's completely clear that you should only do this one thing. And you are often capable and resourceful enough and able to access a growth mindset where you could say, okay, I'm not good at this, but I'm going to freaking figure it out. I'm going to work it out. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Video is a great example. I I probably need this for my business. I care about getting the message out. I never, ever, ever wanted to be a Hollywood star. That was never something that was interesting to me. But I just kind of sucked it up and said, I'm going to have something that's good enough on camera. I'm going to learn this skill and I'm just going to do it. And I'm not going to let I have to do it really, really well get in the way of the doing of the thing. And I would offer that when we start to think of a soul purpose as a dramatic, measurable achievement that is going to enhance our status, and the ironic thing is that's probably not where you're coming from. You're probably dreaming about impact on the world, but the guides are such a fan of unseen impact. And the law of vibration tells us that by just mastering our own survival of sexual trauma, we could contribute to the collective consciousness in being free of that without ever putting it into words. The amount of the human experience that goes into words is super limited, and yet we're really biased towards seeing the world through the lens of what's measurable, what has status, what can the conscious mind wrap itself around. And I believe it's to our detriment. We get away from movement and dance and storytelling and emotionality and inspiration and all these things that move through us that could connect to your soul purpose, that could be really non-tangible. So a lot of people come in with being soul purpose intentions, and a soul purpose aligned life is about who they are and how they move their energy and what their energy of being in the world contributes, rather than finding the words like becoming a major influencer on Instagram. Or there's this unique contribution to having their wisdom and their vibration added to the world that makes a really huge difference. And so the work in that case is not to learn internet marketing. It might be if you have something you want to do, that's totally cool. There's a lot of training out there for that. It's figure outable. You can learn about it. But it may be enough to just say, how do I live my life so that my channels of inspiration and the flow of my energy don't get pinched and closed, and I can be an expansive version of myself, energetically acting on the world around me rather than a contracted version of myself where it's all about protection. And that's another question. You want to have really good filters if you're energetically sensitive. It's a whole nother topic. So that's a big thing, is being able to manage other people's energy. But I would invite you to start to think about, what if I had a soul purpose that was a felt thing and a being thing and an experiential thing, rather than a doing thing that could be measured by the results? Because we have these egos that are calculating status all the time, and it's not a very beautiful expression. We've all had experiences where somebody looked us up and down and decided our status was less than them. We weren't pretty enough, or we weren't thin enough, or we weren't important enough, and it's a sucky feeling. It really doesn't feel good. And yet we hold ourselves to tying our self-value to these things, even though we would quickly step away from someone who was overtly treating other people like that. And so the invitation and the food for thought is, what if your soul purpose was an experiential thing that wasn't going to create status, that wasn't going to create purpose? And what if its actualized version in the world, the fullest expression of that, could look a whole bunch of different ways? And in some ways that may feel like bad news, because people look for soul purpose like they look for the one. I want to find the one, my one true love, my one romantic partner. But that's actually really bad news in a way, because we have billions of people and it can be kind of hard if there's only one. But what if there are thousands and thousands of amazing people you could have a happy, joyful, fulfilled life with a deep soul connection and human alignment? And how cool is that? And then it's a sorting problem. Then there's this abundance. And I would offer that there are many, many people for whom there's abundance of opportunity and abundance of ways being completely purpose aligned could look and bring you enormous joy. And while that might feel a little stressful, if your mind's like, no, I want the answer to this thing, I want you to tell me how to do it, how to find the words that exactly and quickly articulate my soul purpose so that I can just do that thing. And if that's what you're looking for, I'm probably not going to be able to be very helpful, but I'm really interested in supporting people in coming into the tools to be able to feel and hear their essence, and when it's engaged and when it's aligned and when it's happy in the world, and to play warm or colder with that, and to be able to attune to that information. And so the first step is to stop looking in the wrong places, to stop looking for the one true soul purpose that is going to be measurable, that's going to come with tons of money and high status. And I'd invite you to see if you can find yourself in this, even if you're not at the extreme of this. There might be some reduced version where you want really concrete terms that your mind can wrap itself around. But soul purpose doesn't come from the third chakra. The third chakra is super important for our clarity and our sorting and what fits and what doesn't. It's a magnificent, beautiful, luminous chakra, but you're asking the wrong chakra to give you feedback about this if you're tuning into the third chakra, if you're tuning into the thinking mind. And so the invitation is to start to become intimate with other parts of yourself that can provide you with some of this information and some of this picture. Thank you so much for joining me. To learn more about me and my work, please visit my website at handsoverheart.com. There you can join my mailing list for access to free bonus content in the members-only area. If you've enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. It would help me out a lot. Also, a special thank you to my patrons for your support. You offer me the time freedom to work on passion projects like this one. If you'd like to receive personal shamanic support from me and my team of guides, please consider joining my Patreon community. You'll find the link below. And again, thank you so much for listening. This is Katie Weatherup, wishing you wholeness and happiness.